During the late 1990s and early 2000s, you could refer to the Hooters as the Playboy of the food industry, and you would be absolutely right. From brightly and almost too skimpily dressed girls, which gives the girl next door kind of appeal, to the signature chicken wings and cheap beer. Well, except Playboy doesn't serve the last two, but you get the point. And for a company that started off as a joke, but growing to become one of the leading chains in America with over 400 locations and a yearly estimate of $750 million in revenue, the Hooters is one interesting story. But the question is, how did a company that soared so high on the wings of the eagle for so many years suddenly hit the ground and crumble? A business built on a joke. Because of how successful the company was in its initial years, many people have the notion that it was founded by some genius businessmen who knew their onions in the food business. Well, that's not the case. In fact, very far from the truth. And like I said earlier, it all started as a joke. It was a cool evening in Clearwater, Florida, and after some rounds of beer, 6 friends, Lynn Stewart, Jill DiGiantonio, Ed Droist, Bill Ranieri, Ken Wimmer, and Dennis Johnson, realized there weren't any bars around the neighborhood that sold food and beers. You know, a place where you could get literally wasted without fear of the cops escorting you home. So that was their inspiration, and the 6 buddies drew in their spare cash, laughed at their stupid idea, and went on to incorporate Hooters Inc. on April 1st, 1983. Yeah, their business idea was an April Fool's joke. Hilarious, right? Here comes the most interesting part: how they chose the name Hooters for their restaurant. Well, it was pretty simple, just as everything else that has to do with the brand. When brainstorming names for their new fun venture, they found something interesting in the actor and comedian Steve Martin's comedy bit titled What I Believe. In the video, Martin talked about how disrespectful it was to call a woman's breast by certain names, like boobs, jugs, Winnebagos, or golden bozos, but instead should call them Hooters. So, the partners dug into the simplicity of the term and thought it'd be a playful twist when paired with an owl image. Exactly the kind of fun vibe they were going for with the company's name and logo. And just like that, on October 4th of the same year, the doors to the first Hooters restaurant were flung open in Clearwater, Florida. The Hooters 6. According to the National Restaurant Association in America, 8 out of every 10 new restaurants fail within the first 5 years of operation. So, I bet it's only a miracle that Hooters managed to escape that statistic. I say that because unlike most businesses that begin with strong visions and strategies, the Hooters was just more or less a fun experiment or a joke. All 6 of the friends, or as they were fondly called, the Hooters 6, had no idea what they were getting into. I mean, who would blame them? They had never been into the food business before. In fact, those initial months were a hot mess. They checked off all the boxes of what not to do when launching a restaurant. First, they set up their restaurant in one of the sketchiest buildings in Clearwater, Florida. The place had seen better days, stuck in the worst part of town, and had a track record of failed businesses. Before the Hooters, a nightclub had stayed in that same building, which eventually became run down. So, you can say the location was cursed, and anything built on it was bound to fail. Well, not until the Hooters came into town, but still, they were almost bound to fail. They were so unprepared that one of them had to beg a friend to swing by and teach the kitchen crew how to operate the industrial kitchen gear. And here's where it gets wild. On opening day, they were so eager to serve alcohol that they paid 2 friends to pose as Florida cops and read to their partners the riot act. Keep in mind, they didn't even have the beer license yet. Yeah, the Hooters 6 were, let's say, a bit of a circus. But here's the twist. Despite all the chaos, Hooters didn't crash and burn. Nope, it became a hit, almost instantly. And just within a few months, it became very well known around the town. They pulled off an overnight success, turning those early blunders into a crazy victory. Now, it wasn't the cheap beer and spicy wings that did the trick. It was all about marketing, and the name Hooters had a whole lot to do with it. The Hooters Girls. Yeah, just like we have the Hooters 6, the waitresses who worked in the restaurant were called the Hooters Girl. And let me tell you, being one of the Hooters Girls back then was just as fulfilling as having a handshake with the Queen of England. With just a basic menu that included breaded chicken wings, seafood, burgers, sandwiches, cheese sauce, and curly fries, the Hooters 6 understood that they didn't stand a chance to compete with the other well-established restaurants in the area. So they came up with another brilliant marketing strategy. What was it? using young, beautiful ladies dressed in short shorts and tight tank tops. So much so that their boobs, or Hooters, were the main attraction. And shockingly, that worked. The Hooters girls with some good food and cheap beer was the only recipe for success the restaurant needed. And within just a year of business, they had customers willing to wait 3 hours just to snag a table at the restaurant. It was at this point the Hooters 6 knew it was time to expand. Global expansion. Who would have ever imagined that a simple restaurant idea would blossom into a worldwide sensation? Well, if anyone had told the Hooters 6, they wouldn't have believed it either. But after seeing how much the restaurant grew, they knew they had to spread their wings further. And Hugh Connerty was the man who saw the opportunity. Back in 1984, Hugh Connerty, who owned a steakhouse chain in Colorado, approached the original 6 partners of Hooters with a proposition. He wanted to take the Hooters concept beyond its home turf. The deal was $50,000 up front and 3% of every dollar Connerty made with the Hooters brand. In return, the original partners would keep the rights to open more Hooters spots in Tampa Bay and later in the Chicago metro area. The catch? Connerty had the green light to spread Hooters everywhere in the U.S., as long as he stuck faithfully to the original concept, even down to the secret wing sauce recipe. Over the next 3 years, Connerty expanded Hooters to various cities in Florida and the Atlanta market. But by 1988, he hit a financial pit and had to hand over his Hooters development rights to his major lender, Robert Brooks. Now, there were 2 separate entities in charge of Hooters. There was Original Hooters in Clearwater, run by the original 6 partners with Neil Kiefer as CEO since 1992. On the other side, there was Hooters of America based in Atlanta, under the ownership of Robert Brooks, a seasoned businessman in the food service industry. In the 90s and early 2000s, Brooks went all out, growing the Hooters brand both in the US and internationally. He took the total number of Hooters locations to 430, setting up franchises everywhere from Brazil, Taiwan, Venezuela, Switzerland, and China. Hooters was raking in an estimated $750 million in revenue annually. Still, Brooks went beyond just restaurants. He launched a Hooters-branded magazine, a pro golf tour, a stock car racing series, and even a Hooters-branded credit card. Talk about diversifying. The fall. At this time, Hooters was still soaring with millions in revenue. But like they say, good things always come to an end. First, their airline, Hooters Air, which came on board in 2003, with Hooters girls flight attendants flying to 15 different destinations, enjoyed their time in the skies until it eventually closed down just 3 years later in 2006. The same year, Brooks passed away at the age of 69. Also in the same year, Hooters, which was now under the ownership of Kobe Brooks, made a bold move and opened up the Hooters Casino Hotel in Las Vegas. The original Hooters Inc. partners, who still had the Las Vegas casino rights, entered into a joint venture with several other investors. Together, they decided to give the Hotel San Remo a makeover and turn it into the Hooters Casino Hotel. However, things didn't quite go as planned. The Hooters Casino Hotel didn't meet expectations, and in 2011, the joint venture group had to throw in the towel and file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, it's been over 30 years since the innovation of Hooters came to light. They even referred to the brand as a fading relic of the 1980s, and it seems like they've been on a slow downward ride for some time. In 2008, they had a whopping 400 restaurants, but just 3 years, they've closed 35 locations and lost over $100 million in annual revenue, according to Time magazine. Also, from 2012 to 2016, Business Insider reports they shut down another 7% of their restaurants, or better still, restaurants. Another major cause of decline stems from controversies surrounding the sexist nature of the establishment. According to a survey by Brand Index in 2013, both men and women rated Hooters pretty low on the scale, and it's more cringeworthy than hilarious. But it's not just the customers who aren't thrilled. The University of Tennessee's psychology department also dove into the impact of working at Hooters in 2015, and the results were downright disturbing. The waitresses reported dealing with depression, anxiety, anger, and feeling pretty darn degraded. Also, the tight tank tops aren't just doing it anymore. Hooters' initial game plan might have been to attract the guys with, the whole Hooters thing. But some pretty interesting surveys are hinting that this strategy might be losing its mojo for a quirky reason. People just aren't really into the idea of checking out women's chests at a restaurant these days. Still, Hooters is managing to hang in there, with just a little over 300 locations. But even the blind can tell it's not the same anymore.